the 30,000-year-old statue that gave the CIA a headache because it's changing history. The following was sent by two retired CIA agents who wished to remain anonymous. The loss of a small, barely 74-gram ancient Hindu bronze statuette called a kalpa-vigraha has caused the CIA much anxiety. Okay, so it's an ancient Hindu bronze statue. It was what's the significance of the image? What is the CIA doing with an ancient Hindu relic? And why so much stress? The story behind almost half a century ago, a heavy box containing the idol was reportedly given to CIA officials for safekeeping at Lo Mustang is called in CIA's files, by a Tibetan monk who was accompanied by Kampa guards sometime in 1959-1960. A curious CIA official recorded in detail what the monk told them about the box and its contents. Let me remind you that in the Tibetan monastery in the Himalayas also holds the copy of the lightning rod of Zeus given by quote-unquote Atlantean extraterrestrials to Alexander the Great, who lived about 330 BC. So that's also a relic in one of the Tibetan monasteries in the Himalayas. So a Tibetan monk told him about the box and its contents. Why did he think it was important to record the monk's story? Well, apparently, the Americans were initially not sufficiently impressed with the values attached to the objects of Eastern worship at the time, as their priority was to wage a war against the Chinese forces advancing in Tibet. In the same week that the CIA operatives received the box, where some skirmishes with Chinese forces during which the monk and his guards were killed, CIA operatives, not knowing what to do with the strange box, loaded it onto a plane and sent it to a secret air base in India, later transporting it to Camp Hale, an abandoned army base near Vail, Colorado. A few weeks later, the box ended up in a CIA warehouse in Washington with the code ST Circus Mustang-0183, unquote. It will be quite some time before someone at the CIA decides to take an interest in the box and its contents. A strange handwriting found inside and the box's unusual age, combined with its unique design, prompted them to run radioactive carbon tests on the wood the box was made of. The results given to them by the University of California, Berkeley Radiation Laboratory, UCRL, surprised CIA officials. The antiquity of the weathered wooden box and the statue was sheer skepticism. It did not belong to this yuga, as the monk had claimed. It belonged to the period called Dwapara Yuga, making it the oldest human artifact. Radiocarbon C14, dating carried out by UCRL on the heavy box, which was 22 centimeters thick on each side, gave a date of around, I hope you're sitting, 26,450 BC. This makes it over 28,450 years old, and around 23,300 years older than the legendary Hindu Kurukshetra war. Experts also examined the idol and concluded that it was the oldest Hindu idol. No known civilization in history existed before 6,000 years ago. The kalpa-vigraha was reportedly found inside the heavy metal box, the statue here, this bronze statue, lined with wood and locked with an ancient lock. The box itself was strange, as the free space inside it was only 20 by 20 by 20 centimeters, while the wood used to build all 5 of its sides were about 22 centimeters thick each. Its lead was about 15 centimeters thick. The teak sides were further protected by a 2.5 centimeter thick copper alloy plate, which, despite several external corrosions, had preserved the wood to a good degree. The plates appeared to have been nailed to the wood with nails of a similar alloy, copper alloy. Although several rivets were missing, the metal housing was well attached. The box appears to have been buried for a long time, although scratches were visible on the exterior from attempts to clean it of the corrosion. Moisture had not penetrated the interior of the casket, despite its age, although some natural oxidation and wear was observed in its contents. A manuscript written on wooden slats, and the small bronze idol. The old pre-Rig Vedic Sanskrit type manuscript was translated by the CIA with difficulty. In fact, it's reported that it took 2 years to decipher it. Employing experts, including some Indians and Nepalese, people are this from Indians, Hindu Indians and Nepalese, they concluded that the language belonged to the early period of Hinduism, when no language was thought to exist and the Vedas were preserved orally. The manuscript appeared to be something like Sanskrit, but no archaeologist or historian had come across anything like it before. The manuscript mentioned the name of the idol kalpa-vigraha ayusham rasayana vigraha, and the CIA shortened it to kalpa-vigraha. The kalpa-vigraha is a small brass idol weighing about 47.10 grams, depicting a deity resembling the Hindu god Shiva, kneeling or sitting on one knee. Something like a snake forms on his head. In the right hand was a disc or circular weapon, perhaps the Sudarshan chakra of Hindu mythology. Around his neck was a string of beads. The metal forms 3 loops on one side of the snake, a hand holding a conch and the disc. It was about 5.3 centimeters high and about 4.7 centimeters wide, with a circular base 2.5 centimeters long, 1.7 wide, so it's very tiny. There was no doubt that the little statue was of extraordinary importance to be kept with such care in a box so hard and of such strength. Obviously, it was meant to be transported quickly, safely, and because it was so small. But after the manuscript was translated, the events surrounding the kalpa-vigraha suddenly took a mysterious turn. The UCRL files were seized by the CIA, and a veil of silence was imposed on everything to do with the box and the Hindu idol. Quote, ST Circus Mustang-0183, end quote, was removed from the catalog in the CIA warehouse, and the entire episode was hidden for some inexplicable reason. However, the anonymous source, a retired CIA agent, revealed that based on the text of the manuscript found with the idol, a series of top-secret experiments were conducted by the CIA on unsuspecting citizens in the U.S. and elsewhere in the world. According to the anonymous source, in Langley, Virginia, an inner circle, quote-unquote, of the CIA was dedicated to conducting experiments in the early 1960s. It was based on the ancient manuscript, and the kalpa-vigraha played a major role in this strange research. The source, who was partially involved in the research, explained that one of the experiments was of particular interest. One had to drink a glass of water every day for 3 days. This water had earlier been charged, quote-unquote, by CIA agents simply by placing the idol in a large copper container containing drinking water for 9 days before the quote-unquote test animal drank it. No one knew what results they expected from this innocent experiment at the time, but top CIA officials showed great interest. The charged water was also sent to various labs under tight security, and all reports and documents received from the labs were sent directly to CIA Director John McCone. The anonymous source tells that at that time a number of books on homeopathy and Ayurveda were received from various parts of the world and circulated in the department with annotations and footnotes. Except for the experimenters, no one knew what was going on. A month later, the source was asked to lead a 9-member team of mostly women whose sole goal was to give this water to unsuspecting citizens in the U.S. They called themselves the, quote, watering team, end quote. It was not known to them which test animals they would give the water to, as they were chosen at random by the experimenters, but what was certain was that some were teenagers, some were middle-aged, and many were over 60 or at least 65 years old. They had been given detailed instructions on how to do the watering, quote unquote. What also became clear to them later was that all the test animals were born American, black and white, and of various walks of life. There were many African American women. The watering had to be done without the knowledge of the experimental animals, by making friends or looking for harmless opportunities to give them a glass of water to drink for 3 consecutive days. The team often failed, resulting in the water being accidentally drunk by other designated family members, but they had to report on those as well. This went on for a few months. Some of the test animals, quote unquote, were in remote U.S. states and cities. Apparently, the CIA had some system in place to monitor the results of the experiment, as the team, quote unquote, was not required to remain with them after they had drunk the water. They were told, walk away without asking questions. To keep a personal record, the source wrote notes in her diary. He recorded the names and addresses of the various test animals his team had to give the water to. This was forbidden by the agency, yet many were doing it, and the CIA knew about it. The source recalls that during this period, the CIA agents who knew about these experiments, including members of his own team, often questioned and continually tested even their own water, often leaving the office to they bring water for themselves or to make coffee. It was a period of discomfort and worry for reasons we could not understand, she says. Once the watering was complete, the mission was abruptly aborted. In the following years, the source heard nothing of this experiment except as a joke. Members of the inner circle were assigned more difficult missions in the U.S. and around the world. The reasons for the strange experiment were never disclosed, but neither were the results. Over time, it was forgotten and treated as just one more of the many specialties the CIA indulged in during the Cold War. A recent phone call from another U.S. state one morning in December 2008 changed everything. The source, now retired, was suddenly informed one night by another retired CIA agent that the kalpa-vigraha was missing. The little statue. The agent who called was once a member of the inner circle, someone who knew why the experiments were being done in the early 1960s. As she listened to him, the source took some time to remember which idol he was referring to. Quote, "The Hindu idol, my dear. Don't you remember the one called kalpa-vigraha?" he said. "Don't you remember the experiments they put you in charge of the watering team? I'm calling you because I knew for certain that you would be alive and able to hear this news. You called me today, 32 years after my retirement, to tell me about an old forgotten idol that none of us ever understood, and what happened to that it disappeared. Shut up." End quote. Shut up? The voice on the other end of the phone had an amazing story to tell. The CIA story of the kalpa-vigraha experiment, as revealed to him, put down even the X-Files. The former CIA agent who called the source that morning in December 2008, and once a member of the inner circle, was a microbiologist specializing in immunotherapy when he was hired by the CIA in 1946 to analyze the evidence of the Lebensborn program, Hitler's children, that were confiscated by Nazi Germany after the fall of Hitler. Microbiologist was only 38 years old at the time. That means he was around 100 years old when he made the phone call to his 98-year-old former colleague in the morning of December 2008. It reminded him of the many test animals the CIA had targeted for drinking the water in 1960-61, and many of whom had been watered from the source itself personally. The source was able to remember many of the names and checked his diary to confirm and refresh his memory of everyone he had, quote-unquote, friended to get them to drink that water. A week later, they met to discuss the matter. They looked through the list in the old diary, and for the first time in decades, they remembered the events of more than 45 years ago. The source was briefed by his former colleague about the facts of the kalpa-vigraha experiments, which had not been revealed to him earlier. he learned that there were other quote-unquote watering groups in many parts of the world in the early 1960s. His colleague had brought with him a much longer list showing corrections made over time to the names of female test animals who had married or remarried and stopped using their old surnames. The CIA kept a meticulous list, kalpa-tag it was called, of almost all test animals around the world and controlled their lives in secret. They didn't have much to watch. Of course, it was their job, and still is, to report if the test animal, wherever it was in the world, was still alive. The reason all the people who participated in the kalpa-vigraha experiment were expected to live long, well over 100 years old at least, maybe even 110 or even 120. Of course, this does not include those who died on natural deaths in car accidents or other disasters, accidental whatever. Now, the source updated his list. In some cases, he replaced the word Negro with African American, as is accepted today. His colleague would not give him his own longer list. It was irrelevant, she told him. He also told him that he revealed that many years after he retired, he had learned that the two of them, along with 12 other CIA associates, had been unsuspectedly test animals before they were given their teams. The source chose to reveal his list, but before doing so, he removed the names of those he believed were still alive, as he would not be able to confront them if he ever appeared on television. The following is a list of persons who have passed away. That's amazing. The list is that they all lived to be over 110 years old before they died. Some even reached the age of 115 and over. And I'm not going to go through the list. I mean, there's so many. The loss of kalpa-vigraha. The following information obtained from another source still employed by the CIA. The kalpa-vigraha, item coded ST Circus Mustang-0183, had not been heard from for many decades. An audit in 1996 revealed that the heavy box is still in storage, but the idol and manuscript were missing. In an investigation spanning several weeks, spanning several states, and searches of several retired employees, the agency was able to find the manuscript at the home of a microbiologist the CIA had hired years ago to analyze the charged water by the kalpa-vigraha. The manuscript had been found, but the fate of the kalpa-vigraha is still a mystery. After the discovery of the manuscript, a spate of mysterious deaths of microbiologists followed. The media and the internet were filled with conspiracy theories about their rather disturbing passing aways, but few suspect that the CIA until the second source, an active CIA agent, spoke up. But it was difficult to attribute all these unexplained deaths to the CIA. Coincidences are equally difficult to rule out, assuming, of course, that the second source is being honest about the facts. Now, according to the second source, kalpa-vigraha was smuggled from the US to India. The latest information reaching CIA headquarters is that it is in the possession of some employees or software professionals in Hyderabad, in the Indian state of Andhra Pradesh. And for the first time in 48 years, photographs of the kalpa-vigraha depicting it from all four sides have been released worldwide by the CIA, along with a huge cash reward for its return. So this was from a Greek article, Mystiki Cosmi, Mysterious Worlds, from a Greek article I've translated for you. So obviously putting this idol for 9 days in the water, charging it, caused people to have longevity. Isn't that something? Please leave your comments and thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.